Hello students, so today we'll discuss on classification of haloalkanes and haloarenes. So classification can be done based on number of halogen atoms and based on sp3 carbon halogen bond, then sp2 carbon halogen bond. So moving on to the first thing, there is number of halogen atoms. So in this case it can be mono, di or poly. So in mono, one halogen atom will be attached to the alkyl halide. As you can see, one halogen atom attached to the alkyl halide, so we call it as a mono halide. Now, if two halogen atoms are attached to the carbon, we call it as a dihalide. In these two examples, you can see it is two halogen atoms are attached, so it is a dihalide. In this case, you see the halogen atom is attached to two different carbon, two adjacent carbon, then we call it as a vicinal dihalide. And when the two halogen atom is attached to the same carbon atom, then you call it as a geminal dihalide. Okay. Now, in this case, three halogen atom is attached to the carbon, so we call it as a trihalide. Okay. Then the second way of classification is compounds containing sp3 carbon halogen bond. Okay. In this case, you have as alkyl halide, allylic halide, and then benzylic halide. In alkyl halide, the halogen is attached to a primary carbon atom. Primary carbon atom is this carbon atom is attached to only one carbon. So in this case, we call it as a primary. So this halogen attached to a carbon, which is in turn attached to one carbon atom. So we call it as a primary. And then second is a secondary. That is when halogen is attached to a secondary carbon atom. That is, that carbon atom will be attached to only two carbon atoms. Okay. So halogen attached to a secondary carbon. So this carbon is attached to two carbons. So we call it as a secondary. Okay. Then third is tertiary. Tertiary alkyl halide, in this case, halogen attached to a tertiary carbon. So halogen attached to a tertiary carbon. So this carbon is attached to three other carbon atoms. So we call it as a tertiary. So when halogen is attached to carbon, which is in turn attached to three other carbon atoms, we call it as a tertiary alkyl halide. Okay. Then moving on to the second, which is allylic halide. In allylic halide, this halogen is attached to a. See, now we are discussing on sp3 carbon halogen bond. So in all these cases, it will be a halogen will be attached to an sp3 hybridized carbon atom. Okay. So in allylic halides, halogen is attached to an sp3 carbon, and this sp3 carbon is attached to an sp2 carbon. Okay. That is CH2 double bond CH, CH2X. Then in this case, so this is the allylic carbon. We call this as the allylic carbon. And the other example is this is a cyclic compound, halogen is attached to an sp3 carbon, which is in turn attached to an sp2 carbon. So this is an example of allylic halide. Okay. Then moving on to benzylic halide. In benzylic halide, you can see this halogen is attached to an sp3 carbon, which is in turn attached to an aromatic ring. Same is the case, halogen is attached to carbon, in turn attached to an aromatic ring. So in this case, this is called a benzylic halide. Okay. Then come compounds containing sp2 carbon halogen bond. So in this case, this halogen is attached to an sp2 carbon. Okay. So this is an example of a vinylic halide. This is another example of a vinylic halide. And in aryl halides, halogen will be attached to an sp2 carbon of an aromatic ring. So that's it.